Hey all, Kathy the Vegan Prepper here, and welcome to a night in my life. Do-do-do, do-do-do-do, vegan prepper. Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, vegan prepper. All right, it is almost 10 o'clock. We've gotten back from church, and I just have a few things that I'm wrapping up, projects that just sort of don't stop just because it's late at night. I don't know if anybody else does the same thing, but tonight specifically, I just have a couple things to take care of, and I thought I would go ahead and film it and talk about it a little bit. Right here from earlier this morning, I started soaking some pumpkin seeds. And so these are ready now. They've been soaking for probably maybe 10 or 11 hours. I'm trying to remember. It might actually be the full 12 hours, but I think it's closer to 10. And so basically I'm soaking my pumpkin seeds, and then what I do is I'm going to rinse them, get them on dehydrator trays, and dehydrate them once they've been soaked. Probably a lot of people wonder, why on earth would you do that? Well, I've talked about it before a little bit in the Ultimate Dehydrator Cookbook by Tammy Gangloff. I feel like I always don't really remember her name. Tammy Gangloff, she says that you can significantly increase the storage of your nuts and seeds by soaking and then dehydrating them. She doesn't give a figure on how much longer the things will last. But still, it's a good practice. For us, it doesn't end up being so much about the storage, because we're going to go through these really quickly. That's not my concern. But what I have found is that by completing this process, I'm soaking the seeds or nuts, whatever it is I'm doing, then I dehydrate them. And when they're dehydrated, they taste like the texture is almost like they've been roasted. Not quite, but they'll have a little bit of that, like kind of softer, easier to eat. Soft is the wrong word. I think you understand, like the chew is crispier a little bit. It's a little bit, like I said, more like a roasted nut or a roasted seed without it having to actually be roasted. So you're still getting the benefits of the kind of raw nut or seed, especially if you dehydrate it at a low enough temperature. I think it's less than 110 or 110 or lower, I think. And then you maintain all the enzymatic action in the raw nut and seed, and then you end up keeping the benefit, and you have also like a pre-soaked nut or seed, so you don't have to think about it, and it's already like free of its phytic acid or whatever is in there. So it's definitely not something you have to do, but it's something I like to do. One thing I will also mention is something that I have observed, because I've done this to my almonds, and it's just a practice that I like to do. I like to do it for my pumpkin seeds as well, because we put those in our smoothies, and it just like you're seeing laundry, you're seeing stuff over, like this is just my house. But anyway, also me looking extra oily because I've just done my nighttime face stuff. So anyway, what was I gonna say? Oh yes, because I do this to my almonds. I soak them and then I dehydrate them. I have been turning those into almond milk. So I said at some point when I was originally talking about doing this, that I would report on my results as far as the milks that are made with the pre-soaked almonds. And boy, do I have an interesting tidbit for you guys. Basically what I was hoping for was that the pre-soaked nuts would represent, or they would become potentially like an instant nut milk, where I could just basically take a cup of almonds and then however much water I want to put in, to make either a super creamy milk or a less creamy milk. I tend to do 3 cups of water per 1 cup of almonds because it makes the milk insanely creamy, in general. But anyway, I could take but just 4 cups is fine for like recipes and stuff, because you want to stretch it a little bit. But anyway, I would take it and I would be able to just blend it instantly without having to worry about soaking them again. That is not proven to be true. You still get a creamier milk if you soak the pre-soaked almonds again. It doesn't have to be for like 8 hours though. So typically I'll just leave it in the blender for maybe an hour or two. I just measure the amount of water that I need into the blender cup, and I add my nuts, and then I just let it sit, like I said, for an hour or two, and then I end up making my nut milk. But what has happened is the milk ends up being so rich, so creamy, so ridiculously good. I've never experienced homemade nut milk like I have with the pre-soaked nuts and seeds. Specifically, so far, all I've tested is almonds. I'm absolutely going to be testing these pumpkin seeds very soon, because the other extremely interesting thing that I have come across, and here I'm gonna grab my almond milk out of my fridge. I only have a little bit left. So I need to make a little bit more milk. I'm going to be doing it tomorrow with pumpkin seeds instead of almonds to see if what I've noticed has proven true. But here, like, I'm just gonna kind of shake this. Actually, let me put this, I'm gonna feel around. Look at this. Look at how thick that is. Like how much it's coating the glass. This is a seriously thick and creamy milk. That, like I said, I've never experienced anything like this in my homemade milks. The other thing about this that is so interesting is that it actually does not separate in hot liquids. And that was really surprising to me. So, and it's been like, my gosh, this has to be my 10th or 11th batch of almond milk at this point using my pre-soaked almonds. I had a lot to go through. And yeah, it has proven true for every single batch so far, which was not true for making my almond milk from just like soaking seeds and then blending it. There seems to be something about the process of soaking the nuts and then dehydrating them, and then maybe re-soaking them just a little, turning them into a milk where it doesn't separate in hot drinks. I don't even know. Like, and it's not just like, you can get some that fool you where you put the milk in and you stir, and then at first it will appear that you don't have a separated drink. But if you let it sit for a while and then you come back to it later, you realize it has separated at that point. But I mean, like, my mom life is to make my drink, whether it's coffee or tea or whatever it is I'm making, and then I put a little almond milk to make it nice and creamy, because I do love to have a creamy little drink. This is actually, in over 5 years, almost 5.5 years of being vegan, this is the creamiest milk I've ever had this whole time. This is like, it weirds me out a little bit, and this right here is like your replacement for like a dairy milk. I tell you what. So anyway, like I said, I'm gonna see if it proves true for the pumpkin seeds as well. But yeah, hashtag, like I said, hashtag mom life. My drink will sit for forever. I come back, it's still completely creamy, no separation whatsoever. Craziness. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get these pumpkin seeds split or rinsed off. I'm gonna get them onto the trays, and then get them into the dehydrator. And like I said, tomorrow I will be doing an experimentation, but you guys might not see that because this is gonna be night in the life. I'm just sort of showing you my late night projects right now. All right, so these are ready on their trays. My next project is going to be splitting my sourdough. I'm gonna go ahead and grab that and start on that. All right, here is my sourdough. I started yesterday. This is my first time doing a multiple day sourdough process. I'm using my friend's process. And if it proves successful, it probably will. She makes the most beautiful bread. She's actually also the one who originally gave me my starter several years ago. And so my starter is still going, but yeah, there's like bubbles, like there's activity. So basically we are at the stage where, or actually it should have been this afternoon, but we were busy. I split the dough into two and then stick it back into the fridge for an overnight ferment, which I will turn into bread tomorrow. I'm realizing I'm gonna have to give you guys at least a couple of shots of finished stuff tomorrow, but I'm not gonna do like a full kind of multiple day thing. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get this split into two bowls. I think I'm gonna just line them with parchment paper, and hopefully they will fit inside of this little baggie I have that I've saved off of a and I'm like, oh, Sage's apron fell down. Her best friend's mom made this for her because she made one for her daughter, and then her daughter wanted Sage to have one too that matched, and so she made her one. I thought that was super sweet. Anyway, so this baggie I have saved. I've used it, I mean, for so many things off of like the last time we bought sandwich thins. It's like the perfect little proofing bag. It fits both of my loaf pans, and I usually proof in my loaf pans. My gosh, now I'm like, should I just make it in my loaf pans? Because the recipe calls for it to be made in a Dutch oven, but gosh, I might not care. I might just make it in my loaf pans instead. All right, I'm gonna go debate that, and then I will bring you back and you can see what I decided to do. All right, so they are done. Obviously, I decided to put them into bowls. The bowls do fit into my bags. So I'm going to attempt to do these as, you know, originally written in the method that my friend gave to me. And so I'm going to do covered Dutch oven cooking. There's definitely some nice activity in here. Hopefully that proves to be true when I bake the loaves tomorrow. This is two firsts for me in this. The first time I'm doing a multiple day sourdough project. So this project is going to be spanned over 3 days. I guess it's more like 2 days, I guess, when you look at the actual timing, but no, actually 3 days, because you have to start the starter and all of this. So this is like a 3-day project, but a lot of it is in the fridge. Obviously, a lot of it is hands off. The second first for me is this is my first sourdough project using white flour. I've made all of my sourdough so far with whole grain flour. So like I said, I'm just following her method. I'm going to see, this is kind of how I do like everything I've learned. I've done kind of like this, where I will follow instructions to the letter, like the first time, to sort of really learn. And then I kind of begin to tweak and change and figure out what's important and what's not. And then I can kind of, you know, tweak it as I go. But regardless, sourdough is still probably, it's the healthiest way that you can consume white flour. And so, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get these two bowls into that bag, and I'm going to get that into my fridge to go for its overnight proof. I should have done this afternoon. Hopefully a few hours doesn't make very much of a difference. Right, here is my little overnight proofing setup, or a final ferment, or I don't know what the stage is in sourdough. But anyway, I wanted to point one thing out. It's a little trick I've used a few times as far as if you have parchment and you're letting bread rise or whatever inside of like a plasticky thing, or even like under a towel or whatever. I had the parchment cinched down still around the bowl as I slid them in. But once they're in, you can look, it's already fogging over. The moisture is trapped. I've never had a better rise than doing it inside of plastic, unfortunately. But thankfully there's, you know, ways of doing it maybe a little more sustainably. But anyway, regardless, once the bowl, the parchment, whatever is inside the bag, you just fluff up the parchment, and then the parchment being kind of fluffed up now makes the plastic come up higher, so that hopefully this will rise. Obviously, I want it to rise, but hopefully then it won't get stuck to the plastic because there's a little bit of space. So anyway, I thought I would point that out. And I will go ahead and now just get that into the fridge. All right, I consulted the book, and the desired dehydrating temperature is 100 degrees. So you definitely don't want to go very high. These will also definitely still be considered raw once they've finished going through this whole process. And so that's nice. So if you are raw vegan or are wanting to do kind of a stint as, you know, of raw, whatever, for like a reset or a cleanse or whatever, then this process is absolutely fantastic. It makes the nuts a lot easier and seeds a lot easier to eat in their raw state. But then also when you go to make your milks, they're still considered raw. So anyway, I'm gonna get these in the dehydrator, and then I have like, I think 2 more things to talk about. All right, one of my other little projects is just getting this put away. So it's a little bit of a cheat, I guess, having this in the thumbnail, but when I was taking the picture of just the bread and the pumpkin seeds, it didn't look very good. So I threw these in there because I am kind of working on it, but I don't know if it was a little bit of a deceitful thing. I was not meaning for it to be. I just wanted to fill out the photo and make it look better. But basically all I'm doing tonight is putting these things away. This is the Little House Living eggless brownie recipe. It is accidentally vegan. So I have posted about that, I think a few times, but I will share that link down below for anybody who wants it. If you don't, like if you're watching on the TV, you don't have access to the links in the description very easily. If you just Google Little House Living eggless brownies, you should find it. But basically this is the recipe with carob. And this is the recipe with the cocoa. So Adam is allergic to chocolate, so I make 2 versions of a lot of stuff because obviously he can't have the chocolate, and then we still tend to prefer the chocolate. So anyway, typically what I do is I make 2 batches at once of basically everything, a carob version and a chocolate version. There's also more of us in the house who want the chocolate, so this also kind of frees it up and makes sure that he gets some of his. But then we usually start eating on this once ours is gone. So that's kind of how it works in our house. But yeah, I just sort of mix. The first batch is always carob, and then the second batch is the chocolate. And then that way I don't have to like use multiple dishes. I can just use all the same dishes for both batches. And yeah, so anyway, I'm gonna get that into containers. I use the carob from Azure Standard, and it is the best carob I've ever used. There's a major difference. So Adam has been allergic to chocolate for years and years. I used to use Chatfield's, I believe, and it was okay, but the stuff from Azure is like, it is next level. So if you have been looking for some good carob, get your carob stuff from Azure Standard. If you haven't heard of them before, I have a link down below that is technically an affiliate link, but if you use it, it does help us out. So it gives us credit for referring someone, which just helps us out. And so yeah, if you could use that, that'd be awesome. But if not, then just go to azurestandard.com and then just sign up without using our link, and that's also totally fine. All right. Containers. And then one more thing. I haven't edited this yet, so I don't know how much of this has been turning up and people being quite like curious. So basically recently, my son, my aunt, and my grandmother went out, I think, to just one of her neighbors. He's got citrus trees and pecan trees, and they got tons of oranges and tons of lemons and tons of pecans just off the ground. And so, well, I think these they picked, but these, they were just scooping off of the ground, the pecans. These are so good. But yeah, I just have all this stuff out here. It was completely free to me. I didn't even actually have to work for it. So, praise God. I'm very blessed. Generous people to share with me. And so, yeah, that's what kind of all this is, in case anybody was wondering, like, what on earth is going on with how much stuff is on my counter. Somebody's going to ask about the bananas, but we're a big family of vegans. We do tons of smoothies every day. Figure at least 3 bananas per smoothie, 5 people in the house. Although I guess typically Sage and I share a smoothie. So maybe say like 4 people. Anyway, regardless, we go through bananas really quickly, and not everybody has a smoothie every day, but honestly, if I didn't buy it like this, I would be going back to the store constantly for bananas. And so basically, as they start kind of looking like this, like I just did my first batch of freezer bananas today. And as they start looking like this, I just start freezing them. And so then we have a nice little stash of frozen bananas. And then once we're basically almost through the frozen bananas, I go ahead and go back and get myself another 40-pound box. It just keeps me from having to buy bananas all the time. A 40-pound box of bananas lasts us usually between 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how quickly we are going through them. Anyway, FYI for anybody who's like, you have a lot of bananas. And I'm just like, no, actually, that's like only half the bananas that we had. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, we're going through all of this. I'm like, I don't have a nutcracker as far as I know. So I just pulled out the molcajete. It's a traditional Mexican kind of mortar and pestle thing. It just works. I've never seen anything this solid. It works for cracking like hard things, star anise, cinnamon sticks and things like that that you can't really crack with just like a regular little dinky one. And then the shape of this is like you can crack some stuff with this. So this is what we're using to crack our pecans. And that is this. Actually, the compost bin was full. So that's why this didn't get taken out. But it actually ends up working as a nice little visual aid, right? So I just sort of set the pecan up like this, crack it, and it splits open, and then we have our pecan. So that's what's going on the counter. For anybody who was like, what is going on her counter? My final project for the night was pulling in my seeds. I've started a million different things in this flat of seed containers. I save these and reuse them over and over again. And so I did finally start a whole bunch of seeds for our garden coming up. We've got a couple of the bigger ones are kind of coming up already, and those are usually first. But this is the perfect time of year, basically the only time of year that I can use outside to start my seeds because it's like the exact right temperature, just in full sun, and it's nice and warm and cozy. The seeds get started very well in full sun without dying from the sun, which is normal for the rest of the year. And then they're just super healthy and nice. And then I have a lot of really beautiful garden starts for my garden coming up in like February, March, and April, kind of planning for all of those right now with the plantings here. I'm really late to starting my tomatoes. Most of the people in the know around here start their tomato seedlings in January, and I just did not get started until now. So hopefully I still get good tomatoes this year. That is going to be it for now for the night in my life, aside from maybe a couple of shots of finished stuff tomorrow. Hopefully that bread turns out well. But yeah, I sort of decided to make this video because, I don't know, sometimes it can be difficult, being the mom and being the maker, you know, for the house when you decide that you're going to start doing a lot more from scratch, shopping in bulk, taking care of things, the nutrition of your family. You know, it's not always a straightforward and easy task. It does not have reasonable hours for sure. You are overworked and underpaid. But you know, tonight, I guess my point is like, because I actually was in a really good place tonight. There have definitely been times I haven't been, but tonight was one of the nights I got it really right. Just going into the whole thing and realizing, you know, what a blessing it is. Like I could say I have to take care of my pumpkin seeds, but it's like I have a ton of pumpkin seeds. Like, wow, that's actually very special, right? There's people out there who don't have gobs of nutritious food like that on hand. I have to take care of my sourdough. Well, goodness, like tomorrow we're going to have bread, right? Like that's a beautiful thing. It's an amazing blessing to have all of these things, and keeping the right perspective. The thing lately that has been really in my heart, especially as I'm thinking of kind of the difficulties that people are facing over the world, because sometimes it doesn't work to try to thank God for the food, because it's like, honestly, if I had less food, I'd be skinny and I would have less work. So sometimes it seems appealing, but the thing that really makes me feel so grateful lately, without exception, and I'm going to try really hard not to tear up, is to think about the things that people are facing in the world. I've actually also been watching this documentary on kind of the end of the end of like Russian imperialism. And it's of great interest to me because this is kind of at the same time as when my family began going through in the past began going through some pretty hard things. I've talked a little bit about that on the channel before. I'm not going to go into the whole story now, but I've got some harrowing stories in my past of some of the things that my family was going through at that time. And to think that, you know, if the food thing doesn't work, I get to prepare it and I get to do these jobs in relative peace and safety in my home. And that is the biggest blessing, I think, that anybody could pray for, especially if they're not currently living in it. All right, here are the loaves. Sage has been asking about cutting into them for forever. They did not get nearly as big as I expected, and they also feel kind of dense. So I think my starter was just not as active as it should have been because it's cold, but still, hopefully they'll be good. We're about to cut into this one. This is the first one I baked a while ago, so we'll cut into this one to check it out. But it's got a nice crackly crust, which is usually a good sign. Okay, well that does not look too bad. We've got some large pockets, but the crumb overall is relatively dense, at least to my eye. And I am trying to remember, there's some, like, when you look at your sourdough, you can tell like what went wrong. And I can't remember what it means when there's large holes, but the crumb overall is dense. So I will have to try to research that and find that out so that I can try to fix it for next time. But overall, it's definitely still an edible bread, and I can't wait for us to try it. Thank you so much for joining me for this night and like partial morning, I guess, in my life. Hopefully you enjoyed it and got some good stuff out of it. And I will see you the next time I get inspired to pick up my camera and start filming. As always, I hope the rest of your day is good and your life stays wonderful. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.